The Terran Galactic Defense Academy stood tall against the morning sky, its silver towers reaching toward the clouds like fingers grasping at the stars. Thousands of cadets walked through its halls every day, training to become the soldiers who would defend humanity across the galaxy. It was the year 2287, and Earth had been part of the Galactic Alliance for 20 years now. Humans fought alongside alien species, learned from them, and sometimes died beside them. Among those thousands of cadets, there was one girl who never stood out. Her name was Yuna Kim, and she was a third-year student with average grades and no remarkable skills. At least, that was what everyone believed. Yuna sat in the back row of every class. She spoke only when the instructors called her name, and even then, her answers were short and quiet. Her uniform was always clean, but never pressed perfectly. Her dark hair was always tied back in a simple ponytail. She walked through the academy like a ghost, present but never truly seen. On this particular morning, Instructor Deho Park stood at the front of the Advanced Combat Theory classroom. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and scars on his hands that told stories of battles he never talked about. His voice filled the room as he spoke about humanity's role in the Galactic Alliance. "The Krell are stronger than us," he said, pointing at holographic images of the reptilian warriors. "The Variks are faster. The Toshan have better reflexes. Every species in this galaxy has some advantage over humans in direct combat. So why do they respect us?" Ji-Wan Lee raised his hand from the front row. He was the Academy's star cadet, the one everyone knew would graduate at the top of the class. His uniform was always perfect, his posture always straight, and his confidence never wavered. "Because we're smarter, sir. We outthink them." Instructor Deho nodded slowly. "That's part of it, but it's more than intelligence. Humans survive. We adapt. When every logical path leads to death, we find a way that logic never considered. Remember that." Yuna listened from her seat in the back corner. Her face showed nothing, but her hands tightened slightly on her desk. She knew the truth of those words better than anyone in the room. After class, the hallways buzzed with excitement. Large screens displayed announcements about the annual Combat Simulation Tournament. It was the biggest event of the Academy year, where cadets demonstrated their skills in front of military recruiters and Alliance officials. A strong performance could guarantee a position in elite units. A weak one could end a career began. "I'm going to break the record this year," Ji-Wan announced to his friends as they walked past Yuna. His companions, Hyon and Mino, nodded in agreement. They were talented cadets themselves, but they existed in Ji-Wan's shadow and seemed content to stay there. The highest score ever recorded was 847 points, Mino said. "You really think you can beat that?" Ji-Wan smiled. "I've been training for 3 years. This is my moment." They didn't notice Yuna standing at the registration terminal nearby. They never noticed her. She waited until they passed, then turned to the screen and entered her name into the tournament roster. The system assigned her to Bracket D, the lowest priority group. Her simulation would happen early in the morning when most spectators were still asleep, or watching the more famous cadets. That was fine with her. She didn't want attention. Later that evening, Yuna sat alone in the Academy's garden. The artificial stars above mimicked Earth's night sky, a comfort for cadets who had never seen their home planet. She stared at them without really seeing them. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "You signed up for the tournament." Yuna looked up to see Sora, a fourth-year cadet with kind eyes and a reputation for being friendly to everyone. She was one of the few people who ever acknowledged Yuna's existence, usually with a polite nod in the hallways. "Yes," Yuna replied. Sora sat down beside her. "I've never seen you train in the combat halls. What scenario did you choose?" "Solo infiltration." "A Krell military base." Sora's eyebrows rose. "That's one of the hardest scenarios." Most people do team battles or defensive positions. Yuna said nothing. Well, Sora continued after a moment of silence, good luck. I hope you do well. After Sora left, Yuna remained in the garden for a long time. She thought about the tournament, about the simulation, about what she would have to become again to succeed. For 3 years, she had worked hard to be invisible. She had buried everything she was, everything she had done, beneath layers of silence and anonymity. But some things could not stay buried forever. The next morning, Yuna submitted her strategy proposal to the tournament committee. The document was simple and direct. She would enter a simulated Krell base alone, gather intelligence, sabotage their weapon systems, and escape. The AI opponents would be set to maximum difficulty. The environment would be a jungle planet at night, the kind of terrain that gave Krell every advantage. The committee approved her proposal without much thought. One officer glanced at her file and saw nothing notable. Average grades. No disciplinary issues. No special achievements. He stamped the approval and moved on to more interesting applications. Yuna returned to her room and sat on her bed. She pulled a small photograph from beneath her pillow. It showed a family standing in front of a simple house on a green planet. A mother, a father, a young boy, and a girl who might have been 11 years old. They were all smiling. Yuna traced her finger over their faces. She had not looked at this photograph in months. Looking at it hurt too much. But now, with the tournament approaching, she needed to remember why she had learned to fight in the first place. Not for glory, not for recognition, but for survival. She put the photograph away and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, the tournament would begin. The academy would watch its star cadets perform. They would cheer for Juwan and the others. They would ignore the quiet girl in bracket D, who had somehow survived 3 years without anyone learning her secret. But secrets had a way of coming to light. And Yuna Kim's secret was darker than anyone could imagine. Outside her window, the artificial stars continued to shine. Indifferent to the storms brewing in the hearts of those below, the simulation chambers of the Academy were technological wonders. They could create entire worlds inside sealed rooms, complete with weather, terrain, and enemies that felt completely real. The neural interface made cadets feel every sensation, from the cold of rain to the heat of explosions. Only pain was limited, reduced to uncomfortable pressure rather than actual suffering. Everything else was perfect. On the 3rd day of the tournament, Yuna walked into Chamber 7 at 5 in the morning. The main hall screens showed Jiwan's match, scheduled for noon. Hundreds of students had already reserved seats to watch him. Chamber 7's feed would be available on secondary screens, but nobody planned to watch it. The technician on duty yawned as Yuna entered. Kim Yuna, solo infiltration, maximum difficulty. You sure about this? Yes. He shrugged and activated the neural link. Good luck. Try not to die too fast. The world changed around her. Yuna stood at the edge of a dark jungle. 3 moons hung in a purple sky, casting strange shadows through the trees. The air was thick and humid, carrying the smell of rotting vegetation. Somewhere in the distance, alien creatures called to each other with sounds that made her skin crawl. The Krell base was 2 kilometers ahead. According to her briefing, it contained 300 enemy soldiers, automated defense systems, and a central command building with the intelligence she needed to extract. The expected completion rate for this scenario at maximum difficulty was less than 5%. Yuna started moving. She did not run. Running made noise, disturbed the vegetation, left traces. Instead, she moved slowly and carefully, placing each foot with precision. Her body stayed low, using the natural curves of the land to hide her silhouette. Within minutes, she disappeared into the jungle like she had never existed. In the academy's main hall, a few bored students glanced at the secondary screen showing Chamber 7's feed. They saw nothing interesting, just a dark jungle with no visible action. Most of them looked away, but one person kept watching. Instructor Deho Park stood at the back of the hall with a cup of coffee in his hand. His eyes narrowed as he observed Yuna's movement patterns. Something about them felt familiar. Yuna reached the outer perimeter of the Krell base within 40 minutes. Guard patrols moved in predictable patterns, their thermal vision scanning the jungle for heat signatures. She waited, counting the seconds between each patrol. When the gap appeared, she slipped through like smoke through fingers. The first Krell guard died without making a sound. Yuna came from below, rising from a drainage ditch with a knife she had made for a sharpened piece of metal. The blade entered the base of the skull, severing the connection between brain and body. The alien collapsed. She caught him before he hit the ground and lowered him gently into the ditch. More students were watching now. Someone had noticed the kill and mentioned it to a friend. The word spread quietly, pulling attention away from other screens. Yuna moved deeper into the base. She killed 7 more guards in the next 20 minutes, each death silent and efficient. But she did something strange with the bodies. She arranged them in specific positions, leaving them where other guards would find them. One was propped against a wall with his weapon missing. Another was left in the middle of a pathway, facing the wrong direction. A third was hidden behind a door, positioned to fall on whoever opened it. What is she doing? A student asked. Instructor Deo understood. She was creating fear. The Krell guards began to notice the bodies. Their communication channels filled with confused reports. Patrols were doubled, then tripled. Soldiers moved in tight groups, weapons raised, thermal scanners working overtime. But they could not find the enemy. They only found their dead companions, arranged like warnings. Paranoia spread through the base. Guards began shooting at shadows. 2 soldiers killed each other in a friendly fire incident when one mistook the other for an intruder. The disciplined military installation was becoming a nest of terrified animals. By now, most of the academy was watching. G1 had paused his pre-match preparation to stare at the screen. His face showed confusion and something else, something he had never felt before in his academy career. He was impressed. Yuna reached the central command building. The doors were sealed, guarded by the base's best soldiers, and protected by security systems that required authorized access. A normal infiltrator would have spent hours trying to bypass these defenses. Yuna walked to the communication hub instead. She had been listening to enemy radio traffic since entering the base. She knew their codes, their command structure, their fears. She activated a terminal and sent a message using a dead officer's identification. The message reported an intruder sighting on the opposite side of the base. It requested immediate reinforcement from Central Command. Security. Half the guards left their posts within seconds. Yuna entered the command building through a ventilation shaft. She downloaded the intelligence data, planted explosive charges in the weapons storage facility, and set a timer. Then she walked to the main communication array and sent one final message, this time using her own voice. You have 3 minutes to evacuate. Chaos erupted. The remaining Krell soldiers rushed to escape the building, forgetting about the intruder in their panic. Yuna walked out the front door as they ran past her, their attention focused on survival rather than capture. The explosion lit up the night sky. The weapons storage went first, triggering a chain reaction that consumed half the base. Flames rose hundreds of meters into the air, turning the jungle into day. Yuna walked away from the destruction without looking back. Her mission timer showed 47 minutes. The expected completion time for this scenario was 4 hours minimum. The simulation ended. The academy hall was silent. Hundreds of students stared at the screen, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. The scoring system processed the results and displayed them in bright letters. Score: 923 points. New Academy record. Nobody cheered. Nobody spoke. They just stared at the number, then at each other, then at the chamber door as it opened, and a quiet girl with a ponytail walked out, her face as blank as it had always been. Instructor Deho set down his coffee cup. His hands were shaking slightly. He recognized those tactics now. He had seen them before, years ago, in reports from frontier colonies that had faced Krell raiders without Alliance support. Reports written in blood by people who had learned to fight with nothing but desperation, and when G1 finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Who is she?" Nobody had an answer. Everything changed after that morning. Yuna walked through the academy halls and felt eyes following her everywhere. Students who had passed her without a glance for 3 years now stopped to stare. Some whispered as she walked by. Others moved out of her way as if she might attack them at any moment. She hated it. The Academy database showed her simulation footage had been viewed over 10,000 times in the first day alone. Military recruiters from 3 different Alliance species sent formal requests to meet with her. Her inbox filled with messages from students asking about her training methods, her background, her secrets. She ignored all of them. 3 days after the tournament, Jiwan found her in the cafeteria. He walked to her table and stood there, waiting for her to look up. She continued eating her meal without acknowledging him. "I want to know where you learned to fight like that," he said. Yuna took another bite of her food. "The Academy doesn't teach those tactics. I've studied every combat manual in the database. Nothing matches what you did in that simulation." His voice grew louder. Other students turned to watch. "You moved like someone who's actually killed. Not simulated kills. Real ones." She finally looked up at him. Her eyes were calm, almost empty. "The cafeteria is not the place for this conversation." "Then where?" "When? You don't talk to anyone. You don't train with anyone. You just appeared out of nowhere and broke every record we have." Jiwan slammed his hand on the table. "I've worked my entire life to be the best. I need to understand how someone like you exists. Someone like you." The words hung in the air between them. "I'm sorry I took your record," Yuna said quietly. Then she picked up her tray and left. Jiwan watched her go, his hands clenched into fists. Hyan and Minnow approached him carefully. "Let it go," Minnow said. "She's clearly hiding something. The instructors will figure it out." But the instructors were already investigating Dot in the administrative wing. Instructor Dio sat across from Academy Commandant Taijin Choi. A holographic display showed Yuna's official file floating between them. "Her application says she's colony-born," Taijin said. "New Haven Colony, Frontier Sector. No military background. Parents listed as agricultural workers. Enrolled at 18 after passing standard entrance examinations." "I've watched her simulation footage 20 times, Dao replied. "Those aren't Academy techniques. That's combat experience. Real combat experience. People learn things from many sources. Games, training programs, entertainment feeds." Deho shook his head. "No, I've seen what she did in that base. The psychological warfare, the body positioning, the way she exploited their communication systems. That's doctrine developed by soldiers who fought without support. Soldiers who had to survive against superior forces with no hope of rescue." Taijin leaned back in his chair. "What are you suggesting?" "Her physical examination from enrollment shows scarring. The medical team noted old injuries inconsistent with civilian life. Burns, impact wounds, what looks like a knife scar on her left arm." Deho pulled up another document. "And her psychological evaluation. The examiner wrote that she was unusually calm under stress. That's not a compliment. It's a warning sign. The commandant studied the information for a long moment. New Haven Colony. That name sounds familiar. It should. 8 years ago, before the Alliance established defense protocols for frontier settlements, New Haven was attacked by Krell raiders. The colony was isolated. No rescue came for 6 months. Taijin's face went pale. I remember now. The reports were classified. Most of the colony was killed. Most, but not all. Some survived by fighting back. Farmers and miners became guerrilla soldiers. They held out long enough for Alliance forces to finally arrive. Daiho paused. She would have been 14 years old. The room fell silent. Meanwhile, Sora found Yuna sitting in the garden, the same spot where they had spoken before the tournament. The quiet girl stared at the artificial stars with an expression that might have been sadness, or might have been nothing at all. Are you okay? Sora asked, sitting beside her. Everyone's been talking about you. I know. Is it true what people are saying? That you've actually been in combat? Yuna didn't answer immediately. She continued looking at the stars, her hands resting in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. I came here to be normal, to be invisible, to become someone who hadn't seen the things I've seen. She turned to look at Sora. The simulation was supposed to be easy. Just complete the mission, get an average score, graduate without anyone noticing. But when I entered that jungle, when I saw those Krell, something took over. I couldn't stop it. Sora didn't know what to say. The girl beside her suddenly seemed different. Not the quiet, forgettable cadet she had known for years. Someone older. Someone who carried a weight that Sora couldn't imagine. What happened to you? Sora whispered. I grew up far from Earth, Yuna replied. On a world that the Alliance forgot about. And when the enemies came, there was no one to save us. So we saved ourselves. She stood up and walked away, leaving Sora alone in the garden with more questions than answers. The next morning, Yuna received an official summons. She was to report to the commandant's office immediately. As she walked through the academy halls, she knew her secret was no longer secret. The invisible girl had been seen, and now everyone wanted to know what they were looking at. She paused outside the commandant's door, took a deep breath, and entered. Her past was waiting for her inside. The commandant's office was large and cold. Windows covered one entire wall, showing the academy grounds below where cadets trained under the morning sun. Yuna stood in the center of the room, her hands clasped behind her back. Her face showing nothing. Commandant Taijin Choi sat behind his desk. Instructor Daiho stood by the window, his arms crossed over his chest. Between them, holographic displays showed documents, photographs, and reports that Yuna recognized immediately. Kim Yuna, Taijin began. Or should I say, Park Yuna of New Haven Colony. She said nothing. You changed your family name when you enrolled. You listed your parents as agricultural workers, but the colony records show. Your father was a mining engineer, and your mother was a teacher. Both deceased. Taijin paused. Along with your younger brother, all killed in the initial Krell attack. Still, she remained silent. Daiho stepped forward. I've read the classified reports from New Haven. 43 survivors out of 2,000 colonists. 6 months of guerrilla warfare against Krell raiders who outnumbered you 10-1. The Alliance called it a miracle when they finally arrived. It wasn't a miracle, Yuna said quietly. It was desperation. Tell us what happened. Yuna closed her eyes. For 3 years, she had kept these memories locked away, buried deep where they couldn't hurt her. But now they rose to the surface, demanding to be spoken. The attack came at night, she began. I was 14. My family was eating dinner when the first explosions hit. The Krell landed in the main settlement, killed everyone they found, and burned everything they couldn't use. My father grabbed us and ran for the mining tunnels. He said we would be safe underground. She opened her eyes, but didn't look at either man. Her gaze was fixed on some distant point, some memory only she could see. We made it to the tunnels, but the Krell followed. They caught us near the eastern shaft. My father fought them with a mining tool, while my mother carried my brother and told me to run. Her voice remained steady, almost mechanical. I didn't run. I hid behind a rock and watched them die. Taijin's face was pale. Even Daeho, who had seen combat himself, looked uncomfortable. I wandered the tunnels for 2 days before I found other survivors. 37 people, mostly workers and their families. One of them was a man named Junho. He had been a soldier before he came to the colony, dishonorably discharged for reasons he never explained. He looked at me and saw something. Maybe he saw the same emptiness in my eyes that I saw in his. He trained you, Daeho said. He taught me how to kill, how to move without being seen, how to use the enemy's fear against them. He said that humans were weak compared to most species, but we had one advantage. We could become anything we needed to survive. Predators, ghosts, monsters. Whatever the situation required. She finally looked at them directly. Her eyes were dry, her expression unchanged. Within a month, I was leading raids on Krell patrols. Within 3 months, I had killed more enemies than anyone else in our group. By the time the Alliance arrived, I had over 40 confirmed kills. I was 15 years old. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the holographic displays. The Alliance debriefed us separately, Yuna continued. They recorded everything we had done, classified it, and offered us new identities. Most survivors wanted to forget. So did I. I changed my name, applied to the academy, and tried to become someone who had never held a knife covered in Krell blood. Taijin leaned forward. You falsified your application. That's grounds for expulsion. I know. You also possess combat skills that exceed most of our instructors. You have psychological trauma that was never properly addressed. And you've been living a lie for 3 years. He paused. What do you think I should do with you? Yuna didn't hesitate. Whatever you decide, I will accept. I came here to escape my past, not to cause problems. If my presence threatens the Academy's integrity, I will leave quietly. Daeho stepped forward. Commandant, if I may. Taijin nodded. I lost my own unit on a frontier world years ago. We were ambushed by superior forces and held out for 2 weeks before rescue arrived. I know what it means to fight without hope. He looked at Yuna with something like respect. This girl isn't a threat to the Academy. She's exactly what the Academy is supposed to create. A soldier who can win impossible battles. A human who represents everything our species is capable of becoming. She lied. She survived. And she came here trying to heal, not to deceive. There's a difference. Taijin sat back in his chair, considering. The silence stretched on for a long moment. The simulation footage has already spread beyond the Academy, he finally said. Military officials across the Alliance have seen it. They're asking questions about the cadet who fights like a veteran soldier. If I expel you now, those questions won't stop. They'll just become harder to answer. Yuna waited. I'm going to offer you a choice. You can leave the Academy with an honorable discharge and disappear into civilian life. We'll classify your records, and no one will bother you again. He paused. Or you can stay, not as a regular cadet, but as something more. We'll create a specialized program where you can train others in the tactics you've learned. You'll become an instructor, not a student. Why would you offer me that? Taijin looked at Daeho, then back at Yuna. Because humanity needs soldiers who can win when winning seems impossible. And whether you like it or not, you're proof that such soldiers exist. Yuna stood there, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. For 3 years, she had hidden. For 3 years, she had tried to be invisible, to escape the girl who had killed in the dark and walked through fire. But that girl had never really gone away. She had just been waiting. "I'll stay," Yuna said, "and I'll teach them everything I know." Taijin nodded. "Then welcome back, soldier. Your real education begins now." 3 months had passed since Yuna's secret came to light. The academy had changed around her, and she had changed with it. She no longer sat in the back of classrooms. Now she stood at the front, teaching lessons that no textbook could contain. Her course was called Asymmetric Survival Tactics, though the cadets who took it simply called it Yuna's Hell. Every session pushed them beyond their limits, forced them to think in ways the standard curriculum never addressed. She taught them to fight without weapons, to survive without supplies, to win when every advantage belonged to the enemy. On this particular morning, she stood before a new class of first-year cadets. They looked at her with a mixture of awe and fear. Everyone in the academy knew her story now, or at least the version that had been officially released. The full truth remained classified, but enough had spread to make her a legend. "I know what you've heard about me," she began, her voice calm and steady. "Some of it is true. Most of it is exaggerated. But I'll tell you what actually matters." She walked slowly across the front of the room, meeting each cadet's eyes in turn. "I survived because I refused to give up, even when there was no hope. The galaxy is filled with species stronger and faster than us. Some can see in complete darkness. Some can survive wounds that would kill us instantly. Some have technology we're still trying to understand. But they've never had to fight like we have. They've never had to become something more than they were just to see another sunrise." She stopped and faced them fully. "That's humanity's advantage. We don't just survive. We adapt, we endure, and we find ways to win that our enemies never expect. And I'm going to teach you how." After class, Jiwan waited outside the training room. He had changed in the past 3 months, humbled by what he had learned about Yuna and about himself. The arrogant star cadet was gone, replaced by someone who understood that true strength came from more than talent and ambition. "Another successful session?" he asked. Yuna nodded. "They're learning, slowly." They walked together through the academy grounds. It had become a regular habit, these walks after her classes. Jiwan had apologized for his behavior in the cafeteria, and Yuna had accepted. Now they worked together, combining his tactical brilliance with her practical experience. "The Alliance Council reviewed your training manual," Jiwan said. "They've approved it for distribution to military academies across 6 systems. I heard. You don't seem happy about it." Yuna considered the question. "I wrote that manual using lessons paid for in blood. People I loved died so that I could learn those techniques. It's strange to see it reduced to chapters and diagrams." Jiwan nodded slowly. "But those lessons will save lives. Cadets who read your manual might survive situations that would have killed them otherwise. That's why I wrote it." She paused beside a window that overlooked the training fields below. "I couldn't save my family. I couldn't save most of my colony. But maybe I can save people I'll never meet." In battles that haven't happened yet, they stood in comfortable silence, watching younger cadets practice formations on the field. Sora joined them a few minutes later, carrying a tablet with news updates. She had become Yuna's closest friend, the one person who could make her smile without trying. Their friendship had grown slowly, built on trust and understanding rather than shared experiences. "You're famous again," Sora said, showing her the tablet. "The Alliance Military Journal published an article about your tactics. They're calling you the ghost of New Haven. I didn't ask for that name. You don't have to ask. People love stories about ordinary humans doing extraordinary things. You've become a symbol whether you wanted to or not. Una looked at the article without really reading it. Symbol. The word felt heavy and uncomfortable. She hadn't fought on New Haven to become a symbol. She had fought to live another day. But maybe that was exactly why the story mattered. Not because she had been special, but because she had been ordinary. A 14-year-old girl with no training and no advantages had survived what should have been unsurvivable. If she could do it, then maybe anyone could. Later that evening, Instructor Daeho found Una in his old spot by the garden, sitting beneath the artificial stars. He sat down. Beside her, without asking permission, 2 veterans sharing space. I lost my entire squad on Terminus 3, he said quietly. 12 soldiers I had trained personally. They died covering my escape. Una looked at him. He had never shared this story before. I spent years feeling guilty for surviving, wondering why I deserved to live when they didn't, wondering if their sacrifice was worth it. He turned to meet her eyes. It took me a long time to understand that surviving wasn't something to feel guilty about. It was something to honor. Every day I'm alive is a day I can make their deaths mean something. How did you finally accept it? I started teaching. Every cadet I train, every life I help protect, every battle my students win because of what I taught them. That's how I honor the ones I lost. He paused. You're doing the same thing now, whether you realize it or not. Una sat with those words for a long moment. The artificial stars continued their endless parade above them, beautiful and false and strangely comforting. Thank you, she finally said. Daeho nodded and rose to leave. At the edge of the garden, he turned back. The first-year cadets have been talking. They say you're the toughest instructor in the academy, but also the fairest. That's quite a reputation. I learned from a good teacher. He smiled, understanding that she wasn't talking about him. Then he walked away, leaving her alone with the stars and her memories. Years later, when humanity faced its greatest threat in the Alliance War, it was Una's unconventional doctrines that turned the tide. Soldiers trained in her methods won battles that seemed impossible. Her tactics manual became required reading for every human military unit. And though she never sought glory or recognition, her name became synonymous with humanity's greatest strength, not physical power, not advanced technology, but the simple, stubborn refusal to give up. The quiet girl who had wanted to disappear became the soldier who reminded the galaxy why humans earned their place among the stars. And somewhere in the eternal archives of the Alliance, her story was recorded not as a tragedy of survival, but as a testament to what ordinary people could become when the universe tried to break them. They could become unbreakable.